Do you know that using complex jargon and expression doesn't make you a more intelligent communicator? It doesn't make you sound like that. So in today's video, I'm going to explain you why this is the case. Anna, I'm an international communication coach. I help professionals like you to work in an international environment now that English is a lingua franca and how to master this skill of international communication. Well, for today, I'm going to debunk a myth that many of us have. First, myself, I remember going through this and thinking, oh, I'm sounding stupid if I don't use all this fancy jargon. So I'm going to explain you why actually this is not the case if you want to be a very effective communicator. Okay, the reason that this happens, and recently there's a study by applied cognitive psychology by a UCLA professor of psychology, name is Daniel Oppenheimer, and in this study he actually explains the reason why this is the case, and it's because something that he explains as the ease of processing. This has to do with, instead of focusing on you and focusing on how am I perceived, focus on the audience. And if you start focusing on the audience, that's where we find the ease of processing, the way that the person listening to you is perceiving the way you communicate easy, that he understands, he processes information, he digests the information in an easy way. The easier you make it for him to understand, the perception he is going to have of you is, oh, he's actually much more intelligent. That's why, for example, when you ask somebody to teach you something, you have to really understand it very well to teach it in a simple way. This is exactly what happens with the ease of processing. So if you want to become much effective communicator and then be perceived as smart, you have to follow more the ways to communicate in a simple way. So let's see, I'm gonna give you different ways, 3 specific ways that you can start apply this and start to sound much more intelligent. Okay, the first thing that I'm going to recommend you is to really get to know your audience. Whatever is your audience, if it's in a company that you're working or if you're having a presentation, whatever is the situation of communication that you're going to encounter, remember, you have to know who you're speaking with. So for example, if I'm in a meeting where everybody there have no idea whatsoever about technology, it doesn't make any sense that I use a lot of technical jargon about that. You have to get to know your audience, research about your audience very well so that you understand better in what situations it's adequate, it's adapted to use certain expressions. The same happens, for example, with the idioms. For us that we are non-native or Spanish native speakers and we are now in this international communication setting and we have to speak in this second language, we tend to think, oh, I have to use all these idioms because then I'm gonna sound smart, because if not, I'm going to sound stupid because English is not my mother tongue, when actually what I want you to see through this video today is that maybe you're even more effective as a communicator that maybe the native speaker are using all these idioms and all these expressions that are not adapted to the situation of communication they are in. If they are in a global setting of communication, in an international communication setting, they actually have to adapt to all of you, and that means don't use idioms that are very specific of a region that nobody else is going to understand in this business situation that is very international and there are people from all over the world. So that's just an example. Think of the audience and adapt to that audience. Always remember the ease of processing. Okay, second thing, be concise. Okay, go straight to the point. Communication is about communicate clearly ideas that you find helpful for your audience. You want to be understood. The same happens with pronunciation. That is a very important dimension on this skill of international communication. For pronunciation to be in the best case for you, always focus on being clear. Is your pronunciation clear for your audience? It's not the same if your audience is from Europe than if your audience is from America. It's completely gonna change. Remember this when you are practicing your international communication skills. Being concise, being direct, and doing that with short sentences. Actually, short speeches, I don't know if you know this, but short speeches are much more memorable than longer ones. You just have to think, for example, of 2 of the greatest speeches in history, at least for me, that I find memorable, that I always come back to them and I remember every time, is the one of Martin Luther King Martin Luther King uses a lot of rhetoric, there is a lot of repetition. It's like a song, it's simple. He uses simple language. It's all about that internal feeling, that connection Martin Luther King has with his core values and the mission and the why he wants to communicate those ideas that connect so deeply with his audience. The same happens with Steve Jobs, that is a master storyteller. So it's mastering storytelling, actually one of the reasons he's so impactful, using different analogies, always referring to the audience. He doesn't use like very complex language or jargon of technology in his speeches. He's all about connecting emotionally, and his speeches are not very long. He knows that short speeches are more memorable. So remember, be concise, use also simple and plain language. So here I go to the 3 steps for you. Using simple, plain language. Don't overcomplicate. Normally, this happens a lot because we tend to try to mask with our language, with our words, the way we feel internally, how we're actually feeling. So if I'm very nervous or insecure about how I'm performing as a communicator, maybe I'm going to start using this fancy jargon and these words here and there, because this way I'm gonna sound smarter, because in reality, this is not the way I'm feeling in a more deeper level. So let's say that first we have to then go into what's going on for you emotionally, and here's where international communication coaches can really help you changing that mindset and start to feel more confident. From that confidence, you are going to be much better communicator, much effective, because you are not going to feel the need of using this advanced or complex jargon that many times we think is the way we're gonna sound smarter. But that's not the case. It's actually going to backfire. So remember, even if you think that for you to sound more intelligent, this is the way it looks like, that is definitely not the case. This is actually more the way it looks like. So I hope that debunking this myth of what does it mean to sound more intelligent as an international communicator really helps you whenever you're in a situation and you think that you have to use this very complex jargon or these specific words that maybe you don't even have to sound more intelligent. And this is the reason why you're interrupting yourself when you speak, the words don't come to you. I hope that you give yourself this permission to go and be clear and communicate in a simple way, because actually you're more effective. It's always about being understood, addressing more of that aspect of confidence, and then focusing on clarity and focusing on the audience that is in front of you.